Hello everyone, my name is Sai Varun Tej and this is our project called Splitwise Backend Clone developed using Go and PostgreSQL. The goal of this project was to build a backend system similar to Splitwise application where multiple users can share expenses and track balances showing who owes whom. Now I will demonstrate the working of the application and then explain the code structure. Let's register our users. For registering a user, we created a post API endpoint called user uh, register. Here in Postman, we send user details in JSON format. So clicking the send, sorry, here we didn't have it. Yeah, the user is registered. Let's say I add some other person with the same email, then it will show an error. So to check the users who got registered, so these are the users who are registered actually. So this person didn't register because we added the same email with the name Aman, and previously there is another person who named Aman also. So actually, why the ID 12 is not present because that person, that time when we are entering, maybe the same person with a same email, maybe one of these members who registered previously might have already so the same email might have present again, so that's why it might be rejected. So then again in ID 13 or some other ID, the person might have registered or not registered. So if the email is repeated, then we will say it is an invalid input, and then we say we reject that ID. So when this request is sent, backend decodes the JSON request body and inserts the data into the PostgreSQL users table. If insertion is successful, the server returns a JSON response saying the user registered successfully. And we checked already in this users. Now I'll demonstrate expense creation and equal expense splitting. And this we should give post request. Let me take an user. Let's say the person 10 paid this. Mhm. I'm posting this. Yeah, the expenses added. Inside the backend, the amount is divided equally among all the users. So since there are 4 users, this 600 is divided by 4 becomes equal split. This backend stores the expense information inside the expenses table and split information inside the splits table. And we give a get request of balances. And it shows who owes for whom. Aman owes Lakshman 150, Gangadhar owes Lakshman 150, and the previous data, according to the previous data, previous expense which I added, according to that, Nana owes Amit 200, Sai owes Amit 200, Sham owes Lakshman 150. So this is our balances. Then we aggregate the amounts using SQL sum operations. For example, the output shows Sai owes 100. That means Sai participated in an expense paid by Amit and Sai still owes 100 rupees to Amit. Now let us see the database, the value stored. And this is showing all the expenses and these are the splits table. Mm, This is the expenses table and users table. And these are the user names and their ID numbers and their emails stored in the database. And this is our code. At the top of the code, we imported the required packages. We imported database SQL for database operations, encoding JSON for JSON encoding and decoding, net HTTP for handling HTTP requests or responses, and this for the PostgreSQL driver. First, we created a variable DB point for database object. It's a database object. Initially, it is having no value. It's a null object. And we have structs. The user struct represents the user data with fields like ID, name, and email. Similarly, the expense struct stores expense description, amount, payer information, and the list of participating users. And this is our main function. Inside that, we have a DSN connection here. This is a formatted string which is containing the formatted string in which we have the username by default Postgres, and this is our password for the database. And this is by default Postgres port number and the connection. and we have a variable error, and this db error, this is a function, open function, which is an SQL package. So we imported that package here, import SQL database by SQL, and this function will return two values which we are storing in the db and error variables, and we are checking the connections here. Inside the main function, we establish the PostgreSQL database connection using sql.open. Then we verify the connection using db.ping. After that, we register all API routes using HTTP handle function. So whenever we call this API, we give a request for this API, register users, expense balances, the respective functions will get executed. Handlers. And we have our register handler here. So this is our request and this is our response, right? So r dot method is not equal to post. If the thing we requested is not post, then it will show an error, invalid method. Inside the register handler, the incoming JSON request is decoded, validated, and inserted into the users table. And here we have a user struct which we declared here. And this is our user handler. Inside the user handler, we can feed our names which we registered actually. So it takes all the IDs from the JSON response, and then it will take in the backend, it will be converted into the structs, and then it will be stored in the database. This inside the expense handler, expense details are inserted into the expenses table. Equal split amount is calculated dynamically. Here we performed only equal splitting, so no other without, we didn't extend it to the other splits. Like if someone having more contribution, that is not executed in this code. Individual split entries are stored in the splits table. And this is a balance handler. This is one of the important parts of the project. Here we use SQL join operations to connect multiple tables and calculate the balance using between the servers users. We also use group by and sum functions to aggregate the final owed amount. I mainly worked on backend API development, PostgreSQL integration, and equal splitting logic, SQL queries, and balance calculation functionality in this project. These are my team contributions, and Mohammed Rezan contributed Postman testing, debugging support. Dilip supported with API structuring, documentation. Through this project, we learned backend development using Go, REST API handling, PostgreSQL database integration, JSON request and response handling, and SQL join operations. Thank you.